Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shields YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be SPUNJ. What's sad is I do only use gamer names. If people don't know, actually at this point in time, quite a good friend of mine and business partner, Monty Cristo, I call him Monty as though that's his actual first name. I don't think I've ever called him Christopher. But this is how the power of casting. I can't stop thinking of Chad Burchill, whatever, just from Machine saying it 8 million times on all those intros to the broad. So now he's actually like branded your name as well. So obviously, Chad here has been a pro player at one point in time. Insert all the jokes. I didn't make them. That's for the audience to make. Then he obviously was an analyst. Now he's a commentator. And who knows, maybe he'll even be nominated for Host of the Year one year without ever working at it. That's just a little joke about Anders. Remember back in the day on that award? If no one knows that one's deep law, but it is deep law. So, okay, I want to do this, believe it or not. If someone's a massive fan of Chad, you know, with Machine and as a commentator and as an analyst, you probably want to skip to part 2 because part 1's going to be about when he used to play CS Source and then early CSGO. So basically the part you don't know about his career, you don't care to know. And maybe even when you find out, you still won't care to know. Who knows? We'll find out. But I think, obviously, when you're going to reflect over your career, there wouldn't be a casting and an analyst career if you hadn't had this playing career, if you hadn't even got out of Australia, if you hadn't made connections with people. Plus, I actually do find interesting detail. Maybe I'll make this the first question. I actually think in a weird way, Chad, it's not a meme from movies and sports movies. I do actually find that who people are as people reflects in like how dedicated they are to the game, the style of play they have, even sometimes the role they take. Do you find something similar?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. When I look at the way that I am in Counter-Strike, I think that goes with the way that I kind of was a leader and that I am on broadcast. I think that those skills, or at least personality traits, work well in both of the fields there. Even when I'm probably skipping a little bit ahead here, but we get to that later. When I did get picked for the CGS, because we had like our Australian version of the Combine, which was much different, one of the things that I learned when I got picked back then was that I was better on camera, right? I was going to be a better sell than the other guy that they were going to have. So I learned from the first like quote unquote professional team that I had, at least at that level, that a part of it is like the show. A part of it is what happens on camera, what the end product is. So, I look back at how I grew up and everything, and the only thing that I was ever really passionate about was Counter-Strike all throughout my teenage years. I just found like that infatuation with it, and then that's all I've really been locked into ever since. And I think so. That's since I was 14, and I'm now 35. So it's been an awfully long time of just Counter-Strike. But yeah, I agree with that sentiment for sure.
Because I also do think it applies. Like, I think as after being an in-game player and an IGL, etc., I do think people also see you're not just a person who does a tweet. You kind of like try to tackle problems head on and find solutions. And if people don't know, actually, even one part we'll get to later about your casting style is you clearly do actually try and keep up on all the meta stuff that the players are talking about and what the latest smokes and great. Like, do you still have that going on in the back of your head? I can tell. So the question is, in the early days in CSOs, were you actually a leader back then?
So it's like a weird kind of flow of things, right? Because I started playing 1.6 at a LAN cafe, from 14, 15, 16, kind of onwards there. And that was about the time that we had like CZ come out, and then we had Source come out not long after that. But I was a 1.6 by heart, right? And we used to have quite a vibrant LAN scene in all the different states in Australia. And I'm from Western Australia, from Perth. And we would have, at least once a month, I would say, like 16 team LAN events at LAN cafes. And I would go to those, and I would be the leader of the team that I was a part of then. But as I kind of grew into competitive Counter-Strike, I wasn't always the in-game leader, right? When I played more national-based Counter-Strike, so the way it worked was you'd go to a LAN event in your local for like a WCG or ESWC or something like that, or there'd even be some that they'd have people who'd put on national events, and it wouldn't be a qualifier that would lead you internationally. You'd have to come like top 1 or top 2 in WA, and then you'd fly over, and then you play against, we'd call them the Easties, right? Because they're all from the eastern states. You play against those guys, and because the internet was no good back in those days, you had probably 80 to 90 ping to play from WA to eastern state servers. So that's why you needed to have a LAN scene quite strong. And then as Source came out, I was really young then when I got to play for a team called Jolt. I got to stand in because this other kid, he had like an exam or some shit. So I stood in and we won the qualifier. back in Perth, and then we went over to WCG, and I got to fly over at like 15 years of age or something. My mum was super concerned that I'm going on a plane with a bunch of like 18 to 21-year-olds. And I went over and we played the national event there for WCG when it was Source, and I think we came third overall. But then after that, it kind of changed for me. I was playing with more people from the eastern states, right? You're plugging a bit more. The internet got a little bit better. And then I would play in and out of like different teams in Source or 1.6, and I wasn't always the leader. I was kind of getting to learn from other people. And that was then when I would bridge into the CGS, right? Getting picked up there. The team already had like really strong leadership with Boomzer, and then I was more like just the support player within the team then. So yeah, on and off leadership since I first started playing like 5v5 Counter-Strike, I'd say.
If people don't know, because you just referred to it there as if they're going to get this, right? One of the reasons why I'm really sorry to anyone who's like not from Australia, who's a fan of, in the modern day FlyQuest, Renegades back in the day, and they do that thing we all do. It's called like cargo culting, right? It's like if you do all the same things you do in like Sweden, one day you'll be like Sweden and you'll have all like sick players and that. And then what people don't realize is there's a thing called logistics and physics, and basically nobody, because of that motherfucking globe map, knows how big Australia is. So what they don't get, Chad, is it will probably never even be the case that people from where you are, Western Australia, remember everyone lives on the fucking coast because it's all fucking sand in the middle, nobody from there will probably ever have good internet to Sydney, Melbourne, because they're basically, if people don't know, right, Perth to Sydney is 3,800 kilometres. Like that's essentially, that would probably be like someone from London playing with like worse than Moscow, mate. Like it might be like the middle of Russia or something. It'd be outrageous. So like this must be an issue because essentially, like I know it's a similar thing in Brazil actually, where like Rio to fucking Sao Paulo is like a massive distance, and so they can't just go and like have local lands. What happens is if you don't know, back in the day in Brazil, you're either in a team from Sao Paulo or you're in a team from Rio, right? I'm guessing it was a similar thing, right? You're in a team from your area over here, but it sounds like a lot of the other players, they obviously Melbourne and Sydney is the main place people are from, right? They're probably on the East Coast. Was this a barrier early on?
I think early on it was even more distinct. Like even in the East Coast, a lot of the teams would just be from their state, right? You'd just have like Sydney-based teams, or you'd have like Queensland. Everybody would kind of just have their land scene that would have somewhere from 12 to 16 team events on that basis that I was talking about before. So in like the formative years of Counter-Strike, when I was coming in, I remember I went to a LAN cafe. It was called DNA Padbury, right? Padbury's the suburb, but DNA, they had a couple of them around Perth. And I remember I went with just one of the guys that I would play with at my LAN cafe because we were starting to get into it at the age of like 15, 16. And we were starting to get into the 5v5, and we saw that there was a qualifier on, and we wanted to just go watch. We didn't even want to play. We just wanted to go see. And I remember walking in the room, and it was like a classic LAN hall, right? People, as they're comming, the comms are really loud. You could stand behind them. You could get the POVs. And I remember this one guy, his name was Danny, and his alias was Sass Trooper. And he was the in-game leader of the best team from Western Australia called 23. And after watching them play and like how he was as a leader, he was loud, he was yelling, like he was great with the comms. He'd talk shit to the opponent. I remember from that point on, like I was looking at this guy like he was the be-all and end-all. I wanted to be like him, right? I wanted to be like Danny, and I always wanted to play for 23. Or there was, you remember back in the day, like with Fraud and stuff, they all had the stuff at the end of the name. Some of them meant girlfriends, some of them were like little.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Like we had the same thing, right? And like 23 and Clan Zoo, they were two teams. And these guys were older, maybe like 4 or 5 years older than me. And they were like the best two teams. And I idolized all these guys. And the one goal was like, hopefully my team can get good enough and maybe we can get to be a part of this and play like the pickup games late at night with these guys and everything like that. And I just for a couple of years, that's all I wanted to do. And I would never get an opportunity to play with them, right? They always looked down at me as just this like smaller kid. And I had to build my own teams. And I eventually fell into a group with a couple of Asian blokes, right? And two of them, they were cousins. There was another guy who was a friend, and then there was another white guy with me, and we made a team called Merge, and then we actually started getting pretty good. Like we became like the 3rd best team in the state, and we were able to challenge them, and we were able to like, I was so into it back then, Duncan. I used to, at the LAN cafe I went to, 4-player games, I used to help the owner of that organize LAN events with like formats and like prize money and signups and everything, because I just wanted to play events. Like I was so into that shit. Like I still am now. Like I really love talking about formats and looking at the way events run. And that was kind of the community side of things. That was back in, the 1.6 era of time. And I had these guys that I really idolized. And just getting to watch them go over to national events. That's when you'd be watching the WCG back from Perth. They even went to, I think it was WCG 2004. And they went over and they lost to Q8, and it became a big meme because you'd know Function Zero. A lot of people at home wouldn't. Function Zero, like the most well-known team from like the I guess, CSGO days, right? Yeah. And they would go over to most of the big international events. But one time they lost, and this is when it was CZ, and they lost to 23. And that felt like such a huge victory for WA. I was like, oh my God, we can beat them. And that was sick. Watched them go over. Problem was they kind of broke a rule. They had an AWPer in the team whose name was Diablo, and he was from Brunei. And WCG had to have all 5 of one nationality. So they beat F0 with an import, and then they had to go play and he was the best player. Him with a FAMAS and an AWP, he was fucking sick. And they had to replace him with another guy that they had, and they lost to MIBR and Aztec. They got fucking fisted. They lost to Dungeon Q8, and then F0 Davio, he always started after that when he played against 23, he put like underscore Q8 at the end of his name to just like, to really rub it in. But yeah, like those early days, those were the guys that I really looked up to and helped, I guess, impact how I was as like a leader and stuff.
One thing I actually think is quite cool about your story, it's actually why I had a sense you might become an on-camera personality after your playing career, is a lot of the pro players now, maybe the current generation are the ones that came up like, oh yeah, I used to idolize Simple and watch all his demos, and like, oh, I was a big fan of this. Actually, especially in 1.6 and I'd say like Source and then maybe early CSGO, a lot of those pros were the ones where I always say there's a difference between a pro and a fan. Like a fan is the guy like watching all the frag movies and watch all the demos and knows everyone's sense. Like, there was a lot of pros where they almost played like it was like amateur football or something. They were just like, nah, just play the game and I'm off. Like, I think basically if there wasn't like co-streaming and streaming and stuff, the joke is I've told this story before. Back when Fnatic was at its peak in 2015, I asked Olaf Meister, like, do you study like demos of the opponents and see the CT setups? And he was like, no, why would I do that? And I'm like, what? But it's because he wasn't a fan in that way. He likes to play the game. He doesn't really give a fuck about that, right? People will know you were into like frag movies and you actually know a lot of the lore even back from before your time. Like you don't just play for competition, right? You love CS in some level as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I remember back there was like the movie vault. That was like Source days, right? Like the movie vault came out, and that was just shit. They got all the 1.6 movies, the old ones. There's still 1.6 movies being made at the time, and then the Source movies, which I always felt were over edited. But the movie vault was crazy. Like you could just go on watch there. There would be frag movies all the time. And yeah, I guess with watching international Counter-Strike while being in Australia, you had to either stay up super late because of the time zone, and a lot of the time you're watching on scorebots, and then to be able to get like, mate, this is back when you're using like Winamp plugins and like syncing it up, and you've got Red Eye with the scorebot, and you're trying to piece together what's happening like in these games. So yeah, I don't know. I think being a Counter-Strike fan, but also a player, like I couldn't get enough of it. The way that I would talk about the obsession is when I'd be at school, I'd sleep in economics. It was one of the first periods I had in high school because I just stay up all night playing Counter-Strike. But the other thing was it's at the point where, you'd go to the bathroom, you're taking a shit as a kid, and all you can think about is like, all right, I've got this deagle, like what's the round? I'm peeking short. Like It's just in your mind like all the time. That's the level of infatuation with the game that I had. It's the only thing that I cared about at all. It used to cause like a lot of fights with the old man because he was like, oh, you need to get a uni or get a job or whatever. I was like, I just want to play Counter-Strike. You just leave me alone. Like I'll make my own dinner. I remember there was like months at a time I just made like 2-minute noodles because I was like, don't make me, because he got pissed off that I didn't eat dinner. I'm like, I'm playing a scrim. Can you, like, I'll come and eat after. I just ended up making myself 2-minute noodles for the better part of half a year, I think it was, until I realized that's probably not going to be too sustainable. But yeah, I was into all of it. Like formats, the broader game as well. Like I would watch games and I'd just steal like pistol rounds or rounds to call within my teams and stuff. And being the leader, I would demand a lot of like guys who were all at just like school. And like, I was a pretty demanding teenager for just a fun Counter-Strike team. I wanted to be pracking at a LAN cafe multiple nights a week. I wanted to make sure everybody was online. And yeah, I don't know. I think it would have been fun playing with me because of how passionate I was, but I also think I was probably a bit of a to be honest.
By the way, is it the case then that obviously in the meantime, and you couldn't know that then, there'd have to be some Doctor Strange shit, a portal would have to open in this time and we jump out and go look into your future. Isn't it wild that you haven't just worked with them, you've been around Red Eye, Tosspot, Joe Miller? That must be kind of surreal.
Yeah, like it was weird with Joe, right? Because Joe was one that I guess I probably consumed the most of at that time. And then to meet him, and he's only a year older than me, I always felt like these people were so much older than me when they were, because I didn't have, a lot of the time you get a little bit of like pictures or of streams and stuff, but that was super rare. But then to think that we were of comparable ages, or I'm older than some of them. Do you remember when Trace, Danish Trace, came back into the scene? And like he was at some of the first events, and I saw him, and I'm like, hey man, like big fan from 1.6 day, I used to love it when you played with this guy and this guy. And he was like, oh, like I really like your casting, like, you know. And I was like, oh shit, like this guy likes what I do. I remember, and I think I'm older than him. I think I'm a couple years older than him actually. So those type of run-ins were always quite weird for me, because it's like, that was what I was watching, especially I had this weird thing with the French scene for a while there, because there was a player from Perth as well. I think he was half French, half Australian. His name was Ferg, and he played with Immunity and stuff. And he used to be over in France Against All Authority.
Yeah. He went to a World Title Games as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to, when he came back.
Like CPL or something, yeah. He was in, like, he had some good results, yeah.
Yeah, and when he came back to Perth and he was playing in the local land scene, like it kind of, I was like, oh shit, like this is that guy. This is the guy I've watched the Frag movies on and stuff, and I think he's even the same age as me. And then like I was always looking at all the French players. I was like, oh well, and again, he was part of like the cool club, and I was part of like the try hard kid club who wanted nothing more than to be in the cool club. So I was always at arm's length from that, but yeah, I'd know a lot of like the French players. I'd watch a lot of the games that he'd be playing when he would go back and forth between France and Perth and everything like that. So to know a lot of those names and see him kicking about, Ozstriker did like a tweet about doing some 1.6 fun match or whatever the other day, right? I forget what, but half the players listed in it, I was like, oh my God, I remember these names vividly. Like, who we got? Like Hearts is here. There's like Drizza, Sixer, Falco. Like all these names were the ones who were in a lot of the frag movies that Ferg was a part of and stuff. And yeah, I think it's been cool to get to meet a lot of the people I used to watch growing up.
By the way, little pro tip there, don't abuse this. If you are a pro player who's legendary, if you just say to like a caster or an analyst privately, like, oh, big fan of yours, or whatever, they'll just melt like fucking butter in your hands, man. They'll be so loyal you won't even believe it after that. You could just win these motherfuckers over so easily. We're all narcissists like that. We all just want our heroes to tell us they think we're sick or whatever, you know. Even though they could just be like, the jokers might even know we are, this fucking party, like, oh, you're that, yeah, big fan or whatever. Right, obviously, let's talk about CGS. First of all, as you say, bizarrely, I don't know, did Europe and fucking Australia just not get the memo? Like in North America, when they did those combines, they just recruited the whole teams. They didn't really even take players from the combine. Like the joke in CS it was more like for, you know, Dead or Alive or FIFA or something where you don't know the games that people need the combine. They actually made a team using players from the combine in this thing. It sounds wacky enough already.
Well, so I was only a part of the CGS for the second season. So the first season was 2007, and the team that they had back then was like Booms, the Tegs, Huck, Soldier, and Top Gun. Now, the weird thing with that team is Top Gun and Soldier are brothers, and Boomser and Tegs are brothers. Now, they come from different worlds. Like Boomser and Tegs were 1.6s. Huck was just a pure source guy. And then I think like Top Gun and Soldier, they were of the age where they probably played 1.6, but they didn't play 1.6 the same way as Boomser and Tegs did. Like those two guys were part of like some of the best teams from Queensland and competing at the national events to qualify for like WCGs and ESWCs and stuff, right? So those guys had a bit more history going on in that sense. So the first season, that was the 5. And I don't know exactly how they came together. I think you had to get Top Gun and Huck. Like those two guys were alongside of Havoc, who I played with in CSGO. Those were probably 3 of the best like source players, like undoubtedly. Havoc was just too young. So there was also another guy called Death Dog. So there was some names that were definitely kicking about that were really good at source, but they were just too young to be able to compete in the CGS for the first season. And maybe even the second, to be honest with you. When the second season rolled around, what had happened was, so my like Perth 1.6 team had like come to a close. All the guys got older. They went to university. They didn't have time to play. I never kind of graduated to get to play with those other guys that I was talking about. So I was left out in the dark a little bit. So there was a Western Australian source team called XL5 that was going over to compete. And there was a couple of guys in that team. There's one bloke called Vrostein. Damien St. Clair Honey was his name. Quite a name. I would recommend people maybe Google him in Perth. I'll tell you after Duncan once we're done. Dark turn for that gentleman. But yeah, he was part of that team, and I played with him for a little while in 1.6 in a team called Farmers. Anyway, so he was there, and I got to play with those guys and go over to the national event, which was just a national event. Like, it didn't have it wasn't leading anywhere,
Right.
but the Sydney Underground, which was the franchise team, was using it as the combine, quote unquote, to pick their next player. The rumor went that they were going to pick up a guy called Papa John, who was a 1.6 player from the Eastern States, and he was pretty good. And I'd only just started playing Source again. Like, I'd played it back in the qualifier for 2004 or 2005, whatever it was, but I was always 1.6 by heart, so I went back to 1.6. But then when the 1.6 team fell through and there was an event, I was like, well, fuck it, I'll go play Source. This is easy. It's run and gun. Like, this is Counter-Strike light. Anyone can do it. So I went over and I just learned all the cheeky, like, one ways and all the nerdy shit and stuff. But the thing was, I was still loud, and I didn't have to in-game lead because there was another in-game leader in the team. So I was just focusing on shit talking. Like, a lot of the time when I was going up against some of these other teams, I'm getting out of my chair and I'm yelling, not to the extreme of a Call of Duty land that people might be familiar with these days, but still, like, some banter, some shit talk, some back and forth. And then Rax, who was the manager, Ben, he came up to me either after our third place game or maybe, our game that we ended up coming third. It was like, because it was a upper and lower bracket run. So we didn't make it to the final, my team. But I think he came before. I think I got drafted before my team even finished playing within the tournament. And I remember the conversation, and it was like, yeah, it's between you and Papa John, and we have to decide. And then one of the things earlier was, well, yeah, like, we think you guys are comparable in terms of what you can deliver in the server, but we think you'll be a better fit for the television side of things, because we're on DirecTV with the CGS. And I just remember sitting back in the day, used to be in youth hostels. You know, youth hostels were like fucking 8 bunk beds. I remember sitting on the floor of one of the youth hostel rooms with all the guys, like Booms and Tegs and all these guys, and sitting there, and Ben's got the contracts in front of us, and he's like, yeah, sign this, we're going to China. And I was like, all right. And I called my mum and dad after I'd already signed it. I'm like, I'm getting paid to play Counter-Strike, and we're going to China. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, it all happened crazy quick. Like, I can't even remember how the conversations started, but it definitely would have been with Ben, because he was the boss man over there for Sydney Underground as far as the franchise was concerned. And then after that, you had pictures in jerseys, and you ended up on this website. Every team had its own website and stuff with the CGS. And yeah, then there was Forza drivers. There was Eileen became the fighter, the DOA for female. She was our representative, but she was a Counter-Strike girl. Like, she was a Counter-Strike player. Right. And yeah, so she was like, well, fuck it. Like, I want to get paid to play video games. So she learned how to play DOA. Yeah. And then we had, Dan, I think was his name, as the male competitor for the fighting side of things. But yeah, that's the best recollection I have of how it went down. It was an event in Melbourne, I'm pretty sure. I think.
Obviously, if this was a movie, this would be what the Hollywood scriptwriter would do, so it all connects and has like foreshadowing. The idea you just get into the team, essentially, because you're going to be good on camera and you're presentable and stuff, is kind of ridiculous considering you now work on camera and that's your whole shit, so I'm playing the game anymore. That seems a little bit too on the nose, doesn't it? Does that feel weird?
Yeah, well, I think it framed it early to me as well. It's like, oh, okay, so it's not only how good you are in the server, there's other things that play into this. And I think that was one of the things that I carried through within the early CSGO years. And it's something that I even told Boaster, because I remember Gfinity. Yeah. And I remember I went and worked one of those early on, and I was on the desk with SEO, and I think Lauren and Jason were there casting. And then we went out, and this is when I would have been in my later 20s, so I was still, a bit more of a fun guy. I remember we went out and we were in some club or bar or whatever, and I was talking to Boaster, and the UK scene never really kicking off or going anywhere. And I was like, yeah, but look, like, it's not just as good as you can be in the server. You can be a personality. Like, you can bring more to this. I remember having a long conversation with him about that. And now I look at him over there in Valorant. And, mate, you look at him over there, like, this guy is unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's great.
By the way, I even saw, random aside, on Twitter, people making fun of that from CS. What are you talking about, you morons? That's exactly what Carrigan would have done if he was like 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and you would all love that if he did that shit in CS. You'd say like aura and swag like that. Listen, I'm not into like K-pop dances, but it is swaggy. He is fucking styling. And to tell you what, you remember his name, don't you? You fucking do, mate.
Yeah. He's a great entertainer, and like, he's obviously doing something good, right? Because Fnatic over there in Valorant,
they're mega successful,
pretty decent. So yeah, shout out to Boaster one time.
Right, okay, so I actually do even have some nerdy questions about even the CGS tournaments, right? So when you went, if people don't know, it started regionally, and then from the regions, you then went to like the world finals. And what they would do is they had two versions. They had an individual tournament, just Source, and then they had the actual like real world championship, which if people don't know, as I will always tell motherfuckers like Rattlesnake and all the rest of them, was not that you were the best team in the world. That just means your franchise was the best. And spoiler, every single franchise won based on the fucking drivers and the DOA players. It was never based on CS. That was never the factor because of the scoring system, unfortunately. But a lot of people, certain people again, on that Birmingham Salvo team, have sort of laundered that as like, I won the world championship, you know, in Source or whatever. It's like, I think I'd have a word with existence in them about that. I don't know if you really were the best, but okay. So here's the interesting detail. I saw when you played your region, the Pan-Asian finals, because yes, in CS, we have to just understand, it's like in League of Legends chat. In League of Legends, we have regions like the country China, the country Korea, because they're just amazing, and then like all of Europe. Like, that'll never really make sense to me, really, because that's like a continent versus a country. But I understand it. So again, we all just have to pretend in CS, I'm from the continent of Pan-Asia, which is again, like if I live in fucking, how far is Beijing? I don't even know, mate. It wouldn't even be worth it. But let's pretend that's a region. But in this region, as a nerd, bro, I'll tell you the team I'm immediately looking at. Wuhan Dragon. Bro, those are all those are really, that's like Jungle, Chinese, ZY. These are all like players people know. These are fucking good players too. I don't know if they were good in Source. Was it actually cool to even like play at this tournament and to succeed?
Oh, mate. This is the thing. People think I'm pulling their fucking leg when I mention this. We went to Wuhan, motherfucking China. Not even a joke. That's where it was. Okay. Wuhan, China. They built a stadium. I remember walking in there for the first day. Like, we weren't playing. It was just kind of rehearsals or whatever to see what it was like. And there are guys up bamboo poles. I swear, like 10 stories, like bent on these bamboo poles, fixing things on the ceiling. It was out of control. They opened the hotel early, right? They opened because we were coming. Like, it was a whole government-funded thing, right? So Wuhan Dragon, and then the final, I guess, for Pan Asia was in Wuhan. That's kind of how that worked for that season. So, like, you didn't go anywhere. You went into the hotel, you went to the venue, you didn't do anything else. And the only food we were eating was McDonald's, and this is back when McDonald's in China at that time didn't offer you French fries, it offered you a cup of corn. So, right, you get a cup of corn. That's what your food was. So I didn't eat a lot there, but I had hair like this. You know, this is post-transplant, but before it was like this. Okay. And I kind of have like, you know, anime type features over there. So all
they were loving you, right. And also, if people don't know, I can tell you the same thing. This is back before there was loads of tourism from the West. So like the jokes, I've told this story when I used to have my big hair. I've seen literally mothers like pause and tell their kid to like point at me across the street. Oh, look at that. What the fuck is that? Like, no, it sounds silly, but it's almost like you're a celebrity or something mental, right?
Yeah, this is 2008 we're talking about, right? So we're having to go back quite a ways. And yeah, it was surreal to go there because I remember just getting picked up and then going back to Perth and then being like, okay, well, I need to get a visa to go to Wuhan, China, you know, and I'm in line as an 18-year-old with my mom at this embassy in Australia to get a visa to go to Wuhan, China. And where the fuck is Wuhan, China? Like, the only reason anybody knows about it now is because of the pandemic. Otherwise, I didn't even know about it then. I couldn't even point it out on a map. So I remember going there, and
that must also have made that pretty surreal too when that popped up.
Yeah. Like. Yeah. What are the chances? Right? So I couldn't quite believe that. But this is where so CGS, for people who are unaware, was a TV-based thing. So what they would do is they would, you know, use their money to make things look as popular as possible. So they would recruit fans to be there, and then those fans would have on jerseys of your team. And because like you've smashed it there, they don't know Westerners. Definitely English isn't being spoken anywhere near as much as what it would be these days. You would build these kind of weird relationships with the fans who were there because they would be cheering for you and stuff, and they'd be there all day, and you'd have these like small back and forth conversations with some that could speak. This one girl like was so enthralled with our team that she came in the next day, and it was like a delicacy. She brought in a bag of like marinated chicken's feet for us to eat, and for her, I guess that's like, this is a big gift and everything. And we're all like, yeah, like, you know, we had some photos with her and stuff. Nobody ate any of the chicken's feet, I'll guarantee you that much. But yeah, just the culture experience of all of that was crazy. It was so hot. There wasn't a lot of aircon. I remember like you were getting makeup back then as well. But in terms of the teams and stuff, the other one that might have some names that you'd be familiar with would be Singapore Saw. Yes. Right? That had Striker X in it, right? That had like Tech Duck and some of those guys. And even when we got to go past the because we fucking destroyed them all from a Counter-Strike perspective. I wish that there was more like demos or footage or anything. Like 2 teams went through, but we absolutely destroyed everybody. It wasn't like close. Like we were Counter-Strike wise, we were owning everybody. Like Booms are running a really tight ship. It was fast Counter-Strike. It was 16K start money. It was MR9, right? It's a different game. It was really momentum-based Counter-Strike in your face. And like we're the type of guys getting out of the chair. I've got some pictures on my Facebook. I've posted a couple of them before. But in these games, like we're in the Wuhan newspaper. We're all standing up. We win a big round. We're pointing at each other. It's like a proper sport, mate. Like it's full bro culture. Everyone's G'ing each other. Right? It was such a sick.
Shouting crazy shit, I have no doubt.
Oh. Yeah, what was that?
Shouting crazy shit, I have no doubt.
Oh, yeah. Look, nothing too
No, sure.
We were, but within reason. And, mate, like, the type of Counter-Strike that we were playing there is the type of Counter-Strike where you know that your teammate had you covered. It's like cerebral Counter-Strike that we were playing at that event. Because I remember we just fucking demolished everybody. Every round we run, everything. It was just so good. Then, we went on to the international stage and things were different. Like you said, you have to worry about how your syndicate does. We were able to carry it.
I have a question which goes like this.
Yeah.
Sadly, I just wondered, because like I said about the Birmingham Salvo thing, I can't make fun of Rattlesnake, but it's still with a good team. But I can't, if you just look up who the MVPs were, they weren't from the CS team. But I can't make fun of that if I then don't look up what did your team. In the actual international one, you played for Fifflaren's team, the Berlin Allianz, right? Your franchise got absolutely dicked. They lost like almost every fucking game, I think. You played CS at the end when I think the score was like a foregone conclusion. You won. You actually won like a close game against them. It was like a back and forth. You actually beat those guys and they were European source players. So that's no joke. That's a pretty good result.
Yeah, that was on Tuscan. Yeah, so
I think you might have even won the last round or something, did you?
Yeah, look, for most of the game, I was botting out pretty hard. I think I was pretty nervous. But the last round, I had a really big, because overtime in CGS rules was pistol round. And you started on the side you finished on. So we were T-side on Tuscan, and we did like a B split. I think I got like 3 kills. We finished on A. But you can actually hear the comms and stuff in the video. But yeah, I think beating them was huge. But the best part was, so when you moved to the World Finals, that was in Santa Monica. We were in Marina Del Rey, and we were in the Marina Del Rey apartments, which was so cool. Like for 18
amazing,
to 25
This is where I'm guessing, it's like 5-minute walk to the beach or something. And fucking, it's literally like the dream of being in Hollywood almost type shit, right?
Yeah, it was so cool. So each season they did like a kickoff party because it was DirecTV. And the one that they did for the second, I wasn't there for the first one. The one they did the first one was like on a boat. Or there was something about the Playboy Mansion as well. Those things I wasn't a part of. But the other one that we did for the second season was they basically got like all like D-list celebrities to come to the opening. But this is...
Is there anyone who remember? Is there any name that would be funny?
Yes, but this is the thing, Duncan. It sounds like I'm making this shit up. Kim Kardashian.
Oh, she'd be no one back then, to be fair. True. She'd be no one back then, true.
So, and because we had, in our team, we had the best Forza driver. His name was James. He was the best Forza driver in the world. Like, he smoked everybody, right? He had the fastest times. He was the fucking GOAT. And because he was the best driver, and he's probably, at the time, I think he was maybe 5 years older than me. So, he was a good looker. He was good for camera. And he was there with Kim Kardashian and her stepbrother. I forget his name.
Okay.
But he was teaching them how to drive like the cars and do this thing for this like opening thing. And there was like Disney Channel chicks there and everything like this. And I was like, what is this fucking world that we're a part of? Like, you're going on these adventures at night because the age demographic 18 to like 25 and people from all over the world. Like, we're down at the beach and the girls from the British team, like the fighting game, they're playing with my hair at the beach, and like we all have beers, but we're all underage, and then the cops come, and now we're all running through the streets and shit. And we're like, I remember one day I'm walking back with Top Gun and Boomzer from the bottle shop, the alcohol store, whatever people call it, and we're carrying Coronas, right? We're carrying Coronas, and the cops pull up and like, hey guys, you're not allowed to have alcohol like open like that. You have to have it covered. And we're like, oh, like, sorry, we're Australian. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, fucking keep on with it then. Like, the attitude back then in 2008 when we were in that area was wild. Like, it was a sick time. It was that when people were still having full on like benders, people getting in fights. I was in Fatality's room with Rattlesnake and Clown, and they were playing some Mario Kart that had just come out. And then they got in a fight. They're standing up. This is before Optic is about to play like Birmingham Salvo in one of the final matches or whatever. And they're having a full like absolute, they're not fighting each other, but they're pushing each other and yelling at each other and shit. And Fatality's there. I'm like, fucking Fatality's here. And these guys are yelling and fighting and it's crazy. And you're waking up. And one day, I think we're probably past the time now. Remember one day I was bunking with Top Gun. We woke up, we both had a chick in our bed. Like it was just crazy. It was crazy times, like shit that I only you do when you're 18. Like
Sure.
that. So it was wild back then. And that was just the social side of things. There was, who was the GM for Optic? There was I think it was
a chick.
GM.
It was like Cat something or other. She was called Cat Hunter or something. I can't remember what her name was.
Yeah, she'd be out there doing barbecues with like Jason Lake by the pool and everything like this.
Okay.
It was just a crazy time. Like it was fucking sick. I loved every minute of it.
Now, here's the thing, Chad. Much like I can tell you other people who also enjoyed all the luxuries of CGS, and it was amazing, and it felt like you were on the cusp of actually, oh my God, we're going to make it, and esports it. And then basically, and it all imploded internally, right? Here's the difference. Essentially, if I go and look at a Wikipedia, you don't exist after that, mate. Like, there's just a gap of like 5 years until you pop up in CSGO, and then you start to work your way back up again. What's it like to go back from that and then find out it's cancelled and it's like actually that whole shit's gone completely? In fact, Source essentially at this point in time just becomes a European game, or everyone fucks off back to 1.6. And actually, you know how it was. The real problem when people make that stupid fun of people who are like, you said CSGO wouldn't work. No, ESL said CSGO wouldn't work. Like everyone said CSGO wouldn't work. About half the fucking HLTV top 20 just quit immediately after like 2012. Like almost everyone thought this shit's winding down and it's going to become like playing like competitive Age of Empires or something. Like, you could do it, but it's not going to be like CGS. You're not going to again be with Kim Kardashian in a fucking Playboy. That's gone. What was this time period like? Did you ever think like it's over, or I'm just an amateur now, or a quit, or what?
It was weird because to go from getting to practice, against like Fraud and Devour, and we played against like when it was Knack and Kiku and stuff who were playing for the Brazilian team, to play against those guys, to then go back to just being in Perth. And we still kept the team together kind of, right? Like we would play at national events or whatever in Australia and whatnot. But that eventually was going to run its path because we were getting paid like $2,500 a month. So for the time, that was like really good money.
That's, by the way, that's more than in 1.6 people like Forrest used to make, by the way. So that's fucking big money back then, yeah. So,
and then every team had like a franchise player as well who even got a little bit more.
Yeah.
But so going back and then to not have that, you needed to do something. So in the beginning, like we were just still like playing tournaments for a little while. Then that kind of disappeared and I went back to 1.6 and went and played at nationals and stuff. But I would just write articles and do like administrative stuff for a website, which was Got Games for a while there. Like I would write articles, or I would do like reports on like how Cyber Gamer matches would be going.
Basically the Australian equivalent to HLTV, if people don't know.
Yeah, and I would do like help run leagues and tournaments and stuff like that. And then I became a little bit more integrated in. There was a PUG service which was called IPGN, and that was just the provider essentially. But that was like an IRC PUG service, and I became like an admin for them. And I just play PUGs all day. And then I eventually had to get some real work, right? So it just started. Like what I did before the CGS, I was a IKEA furniture assembly man for a third-party company. It was called Think Furniture. And what would happen is people would hire me for like $50 an hour. I wouldn't get the full 50. I think a big chunk of that went to the guy who employed me. And you'd go around to people's houses and you would assemble IKEA furniture for rich people, right, who couldn't be fucked to do it, which was fair enough. A lot of it was finicky and bullshit. But I was only 18 at the time. And sometimes they wanted me to drill into walls and shit. And that was kind of pretty confronting. But anyway, came back. That all kind of fell apart. And then I was like, well, that job was all right, but I don't know. I don't really want to do that. So I just started stacking shelves at a local supermarket so I could still play Counter-Strike all the time and then just go and do that for like 5 hours a night just to get some money coming in. And then my friend worked in Woolworths. Woolworths is a little bit different in Australia than how it is in the UK. It's more of a grocery store than like we have a thing called Big W, which I think would be like Big Woolworths, which would be what your Woolworths is. But Woolworths was it's one of the two largest grocery stores in all of Australia. It's Woolworths and Coles. And I worked for Woolworths, and I started there just stacking shelves at night. And then that kind of progressed, and I became a produce manager in the store, and I was getting like, I don't know, 60,000 Australian dollars a year to do that, to be the guy in charge of fruit and veg. Yeah, and the thing was, it wasn't a terrible job because I was still able to play Counter-Strike on the side. I was still able to do Counter-Strike on the side with a lot of this stuff, but it's the same thing with all that big businesses. Eventually, they get to the point where they cut, like, not wages, but they cut, like, the people I had as my staff. So then me and the main manager I came in and did 4 till 4, and then he came in and did the other 4 till 4, and we just did a 2-man job like for fucking months on end of doing 12-hour shifts every day to keep this fucking produce. I'm like, what are we doing this shit for? I don't give a fuck about Woolworths. So eventually I just quit that, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but my old man was a plumber. And I was like, well, I guess I'll become a plumber. You know, I go out. My dad's a pretty cool guy. Like, he gets to go surfing on the weekend. And he likes photography, and he has all these cool hobbies and stuff that he does. And he's a man who takes a lot of pride in his work. And I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm not the teenager I was anymore. Like, I'm a little bit older now. Let's go to work with him and learn the trade and do that. So I went and I did the plumbing. And that was also really good because it helped fix my relationship with my dad. I got to spend a lot of time with him, and we got to see each other in a different light. And then the plumbing was going pretty well. You know, I'd go to TAFE, I'd do all that stuff, but then CSGO came out. And then at that point, it kind of reignited because I never stopped playing. I just stopped like being able to go to all the nationals or competing as much. I always kept playing Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike was always there. Maybe the longest break I ever had would have been like 3 to 6 months. That would have been it. But I still would have kept playing the whole time. And then, that was basically, I was still doing plumbing and playing CSGO in the early days, but that was kind of the period before. I did a bunch of different things. Got back with an ex-girlfriend. That was terrible. I fucked up there. And that was about it. Nothing else too crazy.
Right, when you got in the VOX Eminor team, one of the first events you went to that people might vaguely remember was this MSI Beat It tournament where it was like they had online qualifiers from regions and then they had a big finals in China. Now, the joke here would be, Chad, because Cole dropped out, this is an event where I would even cynically have gone, there was only 3 good teams there, your team finished 4th. But that's not the angle. The angle is you got to play all the 3 good teams. So you played basically, this is actually the first tournament where Pronax was on Fnatic. This was the Fnatic that won the major right afterwards. There was Very Games, who was at the time the best team in the world, and had Shocks and fucking, everyone remembers that Scream, all that amazing lineup. And then the third team was actually the one with like Peter and Delpan, the SK Gaming Swedish line, which was a thing for a brief period. Was it cool to go to a LAN again and face international competition? In some ways, by the way, this is actually even, I mean, people like Delpat might not be anyone in CSGO, mate. Like, that's a legendary 1.6 player. What was this LAN like? Was it a big deal?
Yeah, so the MSI Beat It was really cool because we had to win an online qualifier in Australia, and we actually beat Justin's team. So we had to beat them in the final, and we were the best because what happened was when CSGO came out, I was part of the best source team, which was Immunity. Actually, there was like, I tell a lie. There was a couple of good source teams. One was the one that Azza was a part of with Top Gun, and he was playing with Boomzer, the guy that I was playing with in the CGS. And then there was like me and Sniper, and then we had Havoc with us, and we had a guy called Imagine and a guy called Dushu, and that was our team. And we were kind of like the 2 best source teams at the end of source in Australia. And then when CSGO came out, we were like, fuck it, let's merge our powers. Like, because Azza was a 1.6 guy like me, but played source because it was the only thing that you could do. Sniper, shout out to Ian, he's a fucking, he'd been playing Counter-Strike forever. Like, Ian's a couple years older than me. He's gone through all of them, right? So then that team comes together. We qualify online, and then again, we need to get a fucking visa to go to China, and this time we're going to Beijing. And we go to this event, and it's like where you're, like, the table on the other side is where the opponent is. Like, you're essentially face-to-face. I remember we slammed all the Asian teams again. Like, again, we fucking fisted them all. Like, we were so much better. But then playing against SK, Very Games, Fnatic was the, like, least well known for us because we were all from the older generation. Like, we would look at Very Games and go, mate, I would watch every single
they're
one
all the source legends, yeah.
Oh my God. Like, you would try and replicate how smooth their executes were, but it was impossible, right? Like, they were on a different level in source. Like, people have to think about Astralis, Zera in CSGO, and then that's like Very Games when they were in source. Like, nobody could touch them. Even though Henry's boys gave it a crack, like, nobody could touch them. And then you had the SK guys, which you bang on. Like, those were the more 1.6 names, like Modi, Peter, like those guys. And you're like, oh, okay. I think Twist was even a part of that team too. So playing against those guys, I think we lost them on train. Like, there was a different level of respect there. And then obviously we knew the Fnatic guys because JW and Flusher got accused of cheating by Asher on like CPL mill game or some shit not too long before that, right? So we obviously knew who they were and everything along those lines. But playing against those guys, it was like, oh shit, like, yeah, this is where we get to lock on. And it felt like that's where we were meant to be with our level, because we dealt with all the Asian teams. Like we just destroyed them all again. I don't even think the games were close, mate. Like, but then to play against the better international opponents, you just quickly reminded of your deficits. You know, and back then, that's before like mid-rounding. Mid-rounding's the thing that eventually is where I, as an in-game leader, wasn't competent enough. But this is back when it was more like tempo-based CS, and like they punish you so much quicker, right? Like that never changed. Like they were always, their time to kill was always quicker, right? They'd always punish you for little mistakes. You couldn't get away with the same shit you could get away with in Australia. But it was like, okay, we're back. Like we get to play international Counter-Strike again. And a couple of the guys had like little stints. Like Havoc, for example, was part of a team called Archaic, who kind of funded their own way to go over and play the BYOC LAN circuit, which is what Source was, right? That's what it was. You didn't really have proper LANs. You had like a I-Series or the Experience or those type of things. So yeah, no, a couple of the guys already had like a taste for it, and it was definitely good to get back into that for sure.
Now, there's actually a detail. This is where I get to fill in some of the blanks of things I don't know in esports history, Chad, which is a lot of people will be shocked to discover that one of the ways you could qualify for the first CS major, because it was a Dreamhack, is they actually had a BYOC. You bring your own motherfucking PC from home and play on it at the LAN. And listen, I didn't even know you played at this tournament, because I just remember the two teams that got out were like Nordic teams. It was like this Zapso team that was like basically a Scandinavian mix with AZ and Cadian, and then there was Reason Gaming that was like MSL and a few other Danish players, right? But when I looked this up, you flew all the way to fucking Jönköping, Sweden, which is in the middle of fucking nowhere, by the way, to play the BYSE qualifier, lose, and then have to go, well, guess I'm not in the major. Like, what the fuck? That sounds mental. That's not even a great place to go.
That's kind of what kicked off after MSI Beat It, right? So it's weird to say that we were halfway, but for us, it kind of feels like you're already halfway. So we went from China to Sweden. And the cool thing was we had made a cool relationship with the Fnatic guys while we were at MSI Beat It. We had befriended each other in a way, especially like Devilwalk and Pronax. The other guys, like Flusher and JW and Schneider, actually Schneider was cool too. They were all cool, but the different levels of like conversing, like Pronax and Devilwalk, the guys going outside and having a cigarette and having a coffee, and you know, where they're chatting with them and trying to take as much from them about Counter-Strike as we possibly could at that time. So we had just established this relationship, and Gomez, who eventually became the manager, but wasn't the manager in the beginning. He was there. Was he there on a HLTV basis maybe? Because he used to do like some admin stuff for HLTV. I don't remember exactly, but he was at MSI Beta. And then, fuck it, he just kicked on and carried on with us to go to Jönköping. Now, the Jönköping story, we weren't really knowing what was going to happen. We knew once we got there where we were going to hire PCs for the BYOC, and our owner, Talnoy, shout out to him. He was the guy that funded a lot. He's the guy that got the sponsors and the website and everything to help fund us to go and do these things. He had organized us to be in the main hall. Now, his thought process with that was, you're only probably, you know, this could be a once in a lifetime experience for you guys. We'll put you in the main hall at Dreamhack.
Well, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and all the kids just playing next to you and eating kebabs and stuff. That sounds ridiculous, mate.
Well, that's the thing, because we didn't really know. But the other thing that's crazy that we only learned about is the fact that at the main hall is where they do the fucking crazy big music acts. And it's like a club.
It'd be like dubstep and shit. Yeah, of course.
We're in the middle of matches while that's happening. And we had a sponsor that was like creative, and it had microphones, but they didn't have like a boom that came around. It was just like on the edge of the headset. So you couldn't fucking hear each other. We're having to yell in this land. But that's not even, it's wilder than that, because we went there and it's like, to stay in Jönköping, for anybody who's ever been there, it's changed over the years, but it's a really small place. There's only a couple of hotels that you can even stay in. So what ended up happening was our owner, Talnoy, he got us a Airbnb, which was, I call it like a farm stay. It was like this 2-story house in the middle of nowhere, not even close to Jönköping, 30 minutes away drive from Jönköping. Now, to get there, we landed in fucking Stockholm. And we've gone, how are we going to get to Jönköping? We didn't have a plan. So Top Gun's dad lived in Sweden, like lived in Stockholm. So we got him on the blow up. We landed at like 2 o'clock in the morning or some shit. And he's like, yeah, I have a mate, because Top Gun is Kurdish, right? I think there's quite a few Kurdish taxi drivers over there in fucking Sweden. So Top Gun's dad's mate then had this big fuck off taxi that we all piled into at 2:00 in the morning. We had to get out, like, I think it was like 1,000 Australian between us to pay for the taxi for him to drive us from Stockholm to Jönköping and then back like overnight. We then get out to this farm stay place and we're like, well, how are we we can't even order a taxi. How are we going to get from this place to the venue? So we ended up having to go the next day, me and Sniper, who was the oldest of the bunch, with my girlfriend. I was one of those guys. Why was my girlfriend there? Anyway, there's a few things I'd tell Chad from once upon a time. One of them would be, anyway. So we go out the next day, we get a taxi that the people who own the property had to call for us into the closest town that's not Jönköping to go and hire a car. So we hired a red van, like a red beaten up fucking van that Sniper would drive every day on dirt roads from this farmhouse. The farmhouse that we were staying in, about 2 stories, we had the 5 players there. I had my girlfriend, we had Top Gun's dad staying with us, and Gomez. So Gomez sleeping on a couch, Top Gun's dad like falling asleep in an armchair. We had to go to a city nearby, a small town nearby, to hire a van to drive to and from this place in the middle of nowhere. It's winter as well. Sniper's never driven on like icy roads. They're dirt roads. We're doing all this weird shit, and that's just to get to and from where we were staying while Jönköping was on to the venue. And we had to hire PCs. I forget, the Gamer something was the name of the place we hired the PCs from. That's where we were like boot camping from for a period of time. Fuck, I've missed a detail. The first thing that happened was when we went to Stockholm, we did a short boot camp at Inferno Online, and we had the Fnatic guys come and stay with us in the house that we had in Stockholm. They came to stay with us in this house in Stockholm, and then every day we learned what a Swedish shower was. This is how grubby those 18-year-old Fnatic players were, Duncan. Their shower was wake up, go down to the bathroom, and wash their face. That's how they start. They were like, we don't have to shower every day. I'm like, you don't have to shower every day. But
they weren't mega nerds.
Clean. That's all they were doing. And then we would go, and we were boot camping essentially with Fnatic, that then went on to win the major, which was really like cool to get to have that relationship build with them throughout that period of time. Because for people who don't know, during the final against NIP, everybody was cheering for NIP. But in the front row, if people go and look at some of the pictures, they will see the 5 members of VOX, they will see my girlfriend, they will see Top Gun's dad, and this stupid inflatable fucking kangaroo that we had in the front row. We were the only people in the whole venue cheering for Fnatic to win. So that was really cool to get to build that relationship early. But yeah, the BYOC was tough, right? We lost to Zapso, which I think was Cadian's team, and they had Robin playing, the Swedish guy, who eventually, he had a VAC ban for some variety, but apparently it was for a different game. But because we lost to him in that qualifier, and then later down the road I saw that he was banned, I held such a grudge against this kid that I didn't even really know. I just had this assumption that he was a fucking cheater and was cheating in the BOC, and that's why, we lost, which wasn't the case. We played Nuke, we got fucking owned. That was when we were in the LAN hall and we couldn't hear anything and stuff like that. And it was single elimination, best of 1. And then that was that, and we lost to those guys, and then that was the end of the run. But we still got to hang around and watch the event and do all that stuff, which was really, really cool. But that was, that we thought we may as well try and qualify for the first Counter-Strike Go Major. Why not? What else are we doing? If we can crack in here, then fuck yeah. But it was tough. It was really tough to play in those type of environments. But that's just the way she went, playing in a BYOC in Sweden.
Now, similarly, for the second major, the Katowice one, the one that was owned by VP, there was some bizarre scenario. And I have to ask you for a clarification here, because, listen, no one back then gave a flying fuck about anyone from Australia. No one could have even named your team. You were also running this tournament. Like I said, you didn't even qualify to the other one. But, obviously, to Australians, the biggest thing ever. So I remember your boy Havoc once did flame me on Twitter because I said you got invited to this event. Now, if I go and look now on Wikipedia, it says you would invite application. What was the stage? Were you invited to the event? Were you not? What was it? Was there a qualifier?
The first 2, which is why I think MSI Beat It and us going.
Why is flaming me then? You know your own history, dickhead. What are you doing?
I don't know. Okay. I think that those first 2 that we were just directly invited to, there wasn't a qualification process because there's always been kind of Valve's thing to make the game. They wanted the majors to be a little bit more international.
Well, the one after this, they gave a spot to an Indian team, for example. Yeah, it was they were trying to do the sort of league thing, where you bring the whole world in, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know how they determined it, but I think obviously going to MSI Beat It and having a decent result there and going to the BOC and we didn't do terribly, right? We were able to contend. We took down some teams that were there, put us on the map. So I think, that those 2 first steps actually set the ball in motion for us to then get the invitation to go to Katowice. So Katowice and Cologne of 2014 were the first two majors the first two majors of that year that we got invited to go to. But then when Dreamhack rolled around, the third major of that year, we didn't receive an invite. But then after that is where it changed, right? I don't know who the teams were who got invites. Maybe there was a South African team that got invited because they were trying to, I feel like they were trying to gauge like what parts of the world have Counter-Strike teams that could compete or you know, I don't remember who, I should have a look right now, who Dreamhack, what was it? Dreamhack Winter 2014, right?
The other one was just iBuy Power, I believe. It was just Americans, I think, was the other invite.
Yeah, because we didn't get an invite to go to that one, right? So yeah, it was the Bravado Gaming with Black Poison and Deviant and stuff, right? They were that version, and I guess iBuy Power probably being the other, because the rest, looking at it just quickly, are all essentially European teams other than Cloud9, right? So that's when it, obviously, for people who don't know, it's when majors were only 16 teams. But yeah, that was, I guess, part of the push from Valve to want these TOs to include more international representation, not just to be so locked to Europe, which, you know, great for us to get put on the map early with MSI Beat It. But those first two majors were fucking tough. Like, the competition felt like it just went up a whole nother level, getting ragdolled in best of one.
You played NIP, the classic NIP. What was that team like?
The problem with playing against those guys was they had no respect for anybody, let alone absolute no-namers. So I remember we played them in practice and stuff as well, and they would just W at you. Like it's like kids in Face It these days. Like they gave zero fucks. They're like, who are these noobs? Like they really didn't care at all. That's why a lot of the stuff when I went to the analyst desk early was talking about having to earn the respect in the server. Like if you can't have a default and stop them just from running at you without having to do anything coordinated, you're fucked. Like an enemy, and that's still true today. That's still true today at the upper echelons of Counter-Strike. Everyone just has got better at those little details. But yeah, that was one of the biggest problems is just being able to deal with just being overwhelmed and getting run at and out-aimed all the time. And this is back before there was some of the other problems. I know I probably sound like I'm bitching and moaning to the people listening, but we didn't have practice rooms. We didn't have practice PCs. Right. So when you flew from Australia, you get to the event like, you know, 2 days, maybe 3 days if you wanted to be generous with the jet lag before. You'd have to do the media day. And then you'd play. So the first official of Counter-Strike I would have played after 4 or 5 days would be a major game. And it's like there wasn't, Kingwin didn't exist to go to in Katowice back then. You know, for the second event, like it was such a problem when we went to the Cologne major, we had a sponsor give us laptops that we then used in a conference room that we didn't have monitors for, and we were playing on Wi-Fi. Like, you had no way of being able to like practice and get there. So yeah, playing against any of these teams, we just got dismantled. Like I think the first 4 games over those two majors that we played, I don't think any of the games were even close. Like I can't even remember.
This third major was nuts because you got what already was the group of death, and you were the bad team in it. You had the one where you had Cloud9, who at the time was actually really good, as when they just got Shroud. You had Dignitas, which is the core that became Astralis, and then you had Kenny S and fucking Existence Titan. Like, no, you're never supposed to win, and you have to be top 2 to get out of these groups, and that's like almost impossible. I mean, the joke is one good team's not getting out of that group.
Yeah, but I think the way that, like, there were so many weird things with the early majors, right? So being the low seed in best of ones meant that you were always going to end up on a map that you weren't like comfortable with.
Right.
And you found yourself as well, they were always picking the side. So you were always starting like T side. You never even got to start on the good side. So you didn't even feel like you had a chance, which is fair enough, right? Like you have to earn it.
Oh yeah, see, when you played against Titan, you lost 16-1 because you had a fucking one round T side on Nuke because they just got to play CT Nuke. Like, that's ridiculous.
But that's the thing is, well, that people won't remember, like back in the early days, that's when Nuke could come out of Source in 1.6, the same as Train. Like Train had that period of time when the VP guys, I forgot what they would have been, maybe it was Pentagram, when they became so good at T-side Train in 1.6 that they just had like the cool flashes coming out main and Neo with the ladder movement, and they made it a little bit T-sided for a while. But those maps were always like 12-3, 13-2,
sure,
and you're like, all right, we can do the same thing.
Yeah.
But not when you don't even have a fucking smoke wall on Nuke and Kenny S is outside just deleting you with the AWP every round. And it's like, I'm sending my AWPer out there. I'm like, yo, Top Gun or Havoc, can you go kill Kenny S? Like, can you just deal with what the best AWPer in the world at the time? It's like, no fucking chance, mate. Like, we were just getting destroyed. It was fucked. Actually, we were close to beating LDLC at the first one. I'm just looking now. 13,
not bad.
16-13. That's not bad. Who was that fucking version of the team? Let me have a look.
That was the one that was like Happy and Maniac and Uzi and GMX or something, I think. It was not, wasn't a bad squad. That. Wasn't bad.
It's not bad at all. I did bottom frag, so we'll forget about that.
Apex still playing now, of course, in the best team in the world. Yeah. Oh, does it make sense? Does it? Whatever.
No.
Fuck this guy.
Oh, shit. But yeah, like the first two that we went to, you tried to link them with other events if you could, but there wasn't even that many events going on that we could be a part of. 2015, that kind of changed, but 2014, it was like, you go out, have a good time, have some beers with everybody, talk to the Valve devs, get fisted in Counter-Strike, and, you know, that was about it.
You know, I'm always rep my set, and the people who've got my back are the following people who support my videos. Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Jason, Jensen Gore, Tosh, Toucan, and you know the all-time ride or die, Jerky's Minion, isn't it? Special thanks to him. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to find out who the upcoming interview subjects are? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions with me where you set the topics? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Well, all of those perks and more are available where? At the Patreon link in the description box below. So put your money where your mouth is and join the Scroominati today. You dig?